Just a little bit about myself. My name's Andy Stevenson. I work for the global consultant Mott MacDonald. I've been studying transport planning for 20 years now, the last 10 years in the Middle East. And I have to say the last 2 to 3 years have been amongst the most exciting in my career, with everything that's going on around future mobility, changing behaviors, and the rapid advancement of technology. So, who wants to save $1 billion US? It's not often you hear a transport planner say that, but I'm going to ask the question. I can see that some of the developers in the room are already very excited. We've been researching this for 2 years now to understand these changes that are going on in the world. In this case, we've picked the retail mall, but you can apply this to pretty much any development that has a lot of parking. So it could be a hospital, it could be stadia, it could be airports. For this one, we've gone for the retail mall. So what's brought about a transport planner making a statement, I can save you $1 billion US? Well, there's this rapid advancement of technology. Every day we hear something new, something different, and it's the next quantum leap. Whether it's artificial intelligence, we hear about it every day. 5G's coming, we're waiting for that, and again we'll have this leap. But I think the important thing here is people are also changing quite considerably. People don't want to own things anymore. We are moving from ownership to usership. And millennials and Generation Z, they want something different than we wanted in the past. The 4 pillars of future mobility that are allowing this kind of thing to happen. Shared ownership is already happening. You can see it on the streets, Uber and Careem. Electric vehicles are here. Just today on the radio, I heard a manufacturer with an 8-year warranty on an electric vehicle. Autonomous vehicles, you hear about these all the time. They're coming. It is a revolution, and we need to get ready for them. We are more connected than we've ever been before. And this combined with the technology and behavioral change means things are moving at pace. But what it has done is created an enormous amount of uncertainty, a deep uncertainty, because nobody really knows the answer to some of the questions I get posed as a transport planner. We can't rely on some of our old methods to predict this very uncertain future. They won't work. So how do we start to deal with uncertainty like this? Fortunately, I have the answer. The answer is scenario planning, to assess a range of potential futures, to hone down in what you think is going to happen. What's the most plausible scenario? You can then start at designing your new assets or retrofitting some of your old assets so they are flexible and amenable to change. You need to make sure you can remove them easily. You can change them. You can adapt them. Make sure that they are future-proofed. But all of this gives rise to many, many questions. Are we going to get smaller car parking spaces because of these autonomous vehicles? Are we going to get a reduction in the parking spaces because of them? Are these behaviors going to be a better experience? Are we going to have that less congested parking area? Are we going to get environmental benefits? Are we using our assets most effectively? Are we opening up further opportunities for developable space? Do something different with. And finally, are we looking at new areas of revenue? So as I said, we've assessed multiple scenarios and started to hone down. Unfortunately, I only got 15 minutes, so I can't tell you about all of them. So we've honed it down into something which we believe could happen, might happen. And we have tested many more, believe me. We'll be outside, and I can answer all sorts of questions on this. So the scenarios we've started to look at are that autonomous vehicles never happen. So that's today, really, because they're not here. We're also looking at shared ownership. And by that, I don't mean more people in a car. It means you're prepared to own cars together. Then we've got autonomous vehicles arrive much sooner than we expect. And we have a move towards shared ownership. Then we get into the scenario where autonomous vehicles start to dominate, and then they completely dominate the market. So this is a study we've been working on for some time with a company called City Labs. This is their parking simulation software, Dynasim. We have given them many challenges because they've had to reach deep into their software to do what we want them to do in terms of some of those scenarios. So this is a typical peak hour at a mall that you will see anywhere in the world. You will see the mall at the top. It's actually out the top of the screen, but you get the idea. With a parking area that's full, people want to park next to the door. People don't want to park far away, right? We all know this model. But what happens if autonomous vehicles arrive much sooner and people start to share? What we found is that we have to introduce a pick-up and drop-off area, like an airport-style drop-off, which we're familiar with. We also found that we had to introduce an extra exit. I don't think I can reach, but just up on the left side of the screen here. And what we did find through many different scenarios is trying to size this drop-off was quite difficult, and it does depend on a number of factors. But what we did notice is that we started to create opportunity space, not only in the conventional parking, but also in other areas near to the mall, which you can start to do things with differently than just parking. And we went to where autonomous vehicles start to dominate, but also there's more shared ownership. So you can see a completely different model in that the pickup and drop-off area have become significant in their own right, and they're taking space. We also note that the conventional parking in that area, they still want to park close to the mall, but there's a huge space to do something else with in the future. We also noted that the AV parking is getting more and more and more. And remember, we can park these much closer together because people don't need to get out of them. And then we go to the future that some people want, and we hear about all the time. Autonomous vehicles completely dominating. Now, we don't have any conventional cars, and this is probably a long distance away. But what it does mean, that pick-up and drop-off area gets even bigger than it was. Almost to the scale where it starts to become unmanageable. There are a lot of challenges around this in terms of getting pedestrians across some of these lanes. You only need to go to one or two airports in the region to know and feel how this might be in the future. But what it does do is it creates a huge swathe of area that you can use for something else in the future. And I should just probably say, we did test this repeatedly to get to this layout. We had some early findings where our pickup and drop-off wasn't big enough, and we clogged up the whole network with vehicles, and we couldn't actually get them into the development. So they were the scenarios, and I think you saw we started to create a number of spaces. We also created a few problems along the way, which we were able to fix. But which one do we believe? This is where you start to build consensus around the scenario planning with consultants, with governments, with the developers to decide which of those is the most plausible. So this is just to summarize the videos. We reckoned over time, as sharing increases and technology advances and people's behavior change, that we could potentially save 60% of your parking. Now that's if autonomous vehicles completely dominate, which is unlikely. We've put a little bit of a timeline on the side, but that is really uncertain, and you need to work through those scenario plans to get there. What's certain is we're getting more pick-up and drop-off, less parking, and more opportunities. So back to the billion-dollar question. And for shopping malls in particular, just to go back to the title. We studied 20 of the biggest malls in Dubai, and we found out they had 100,000 car park spaces, which rather blew me away, to be honest. Then we went and studied 12 of the proposed new malls that we're expecting in the next 5 to 10 years, and found out they needed another 100,000 car park spaces. We know through the studies that we've done that some of those car park spaces need to be re-provisioned for the pick-up and drop-off, as I showed you earlier. But we also know that autonomous vehicles, we can park them much more efficiently. They're going to be better at parking than we are at the moment, and people don't need to get in and out of them. So we can park much more cars in a smaller space. So working that out, if we can save 40,000 car park spaces, we think we could save the retail industry in Dubai around $1 billion US. But what are the implications of this? Access is going to remain the same. Generally, people are going to come from the same direction. We think there will be more uses of public transport, particularly in Dubai, as this matures. What we know is parking needs to be flexible and future-proofed, so it can adapt to these new technologies and people's behavior to accommodate those additional drop-off requirements. The layout needs to be able to react to this future technology and the behavioral change. It is going to change the layout of malls because people are going to want to drop off exactly next to the anchor. So we suspect that there'll be more anchors in the shopping mall. We do need to future-proof. We need to consider those alternative futures. Whether you believe the ones I put up or not, you need to look at those, start to scenario plan, to hone down on the most plausible solution. And lastly, it's about creating value. What are you going to use this space for? If we save it from parking, let's use it for something. It could be for more GFA. At that, you would need to look at certain things because that might bring more autonomous vehicles in the future. We could use them for green spaces. We could use them for electric vehicle charging. We could use them for happiness. So above all, we can create less parking, more shopping, more happiness. Thank you very much.